Yes, I wanted to just go over some technical aspects of our papers, things to remember, like margins, spacing, font, title, um, header, uh, works cited, things like this. Um, I wish I had a share screen function on this software, but it doesn't. So I'm just going to go over this stuff verbally and expect you to review the MLA paper I sent out this morning with the link to the Purdue, which is a university, Purdue University's website on MLA. Um, One of the most important things to remember is that the margins on your paper are 1 inch. So make sure that you're familiar with how to set those. Your entire paper is double spaced. Um, your paragraphs are indented 1 inch. Your paper, let me bring this up here real quick. I do have a physical copy of the paper. Just look here. Your paper has, oops, right here, a header, which is your last name and a number, the number page, including page one. And right here, up here is your name, my name, the class, and the date. Here is, it's kind of hard doing this backwards. Here is the title. Everything is double spaced all through it. You can see it's got a healthy, if you don't see these healthy margins, then, or if it's too far in, pay attention to that. I notice it automatically. So make sure your margins are at 1 inch. Um, uh, um, on that. So the whole page, once you do an insert of the header up here, it will count the pages for you. So if you have any questions about that, just Google header, Microsoft Word header on Google, and you'll get a YouTube video showing you how to do that. So when in doubt, turn to Google, and any technical layout questions that you may have about your paper, you can find either on the Purdue OWL website or Google can usually let you see it pretty simply as well. So there should be no excuses for mistakes when it comes to this. You will lose significant points for not formatting your paper correctly. So just to go over sort of the structure of the paper itself, if you'll recall that we have three, sometimes four sections to our research and analysis papers. Um, we have an introduction, we have a body, we have an opposition section, and we have a conclusion. Now, if this was an English course of English majors or graduate school majors, we would have an opposition section in this paper. But since you're novices and introductory, this is just an introductory course. We will not have an opposition section because I don't expect you to be as well versed enough to argue with other experts in the literary field. Um, so just three sections for this paper: intro, body, conclusion. Um, if you'll recall, and these are just basics from 111, the introductory paragraph has a couple things. It has a hook, which is a way of capturing your reader's attention. It can be a quote, it can be a statistic, personal story, some way to reach in. If you look at the Melville Twain paper on Canvas that I posted, that I wrote back in 2014, you'll see that the first words are, I was a community organizer in African American communities for 10 years in cities stretching from Oakland, California to Roanoke, Virginia. So I opened this literary paper with a personal story of working in African American communities as a community organizer. So personal stories are a great way to get into your papers. Not the only way, but sometimes a statistic, as I mentioned, can work as well, or other ideas that you may come up with. But the point is to get your reader into the paper and to grab his or her attention and to get them into it. Um, the other purpose, of course, in an introductory paragraph is your thesis statement. If you recall, thesis statement argues a point. It has more than one side in terms of the argument. It's debatable, it's controversial with a little c, meaning that it's not a bad thing. It's just that thesis statements are jumping into an argument that's already been going. It's sort of like your English 111 textbook used the image of water. It's going downstream. You're jumping into a conversation that's been going on for many, many years. You're adding a verse to it, and then you step out of the water, and the water's changed because you've added a verse or so. Um, and so this is what we try to do in our introduction, is to get it kicked off, get it started with a hook, a personal story, and the thesis statement comes at the end. Remember this too, it's important. The thesis statement comes in the last sentence of your introductory paragraph. One good way that I go in my English 111 classes, I talk about introducing a thesis statement is to put in front of it, I will argue. So I will argue that blank, blank, blank. Uh, I will argue, uh, and that frames the statement so that because what it is an argument, and in a literary course like this, most people coming into it have only written book reports, and a book report is sort of a summary of a book. And in a literary English level, college level English class, we don't do book reports. We argue a sort of a straightforward angle on a paper, some topic in the paper. Um, you do not have to introduce the book or the plot or anything in your introduction or your first few paragraphs that open that open the paper. I've read everything that you're going to be writing about in here, so I do not need to hear a summary of the book or anything like it. Just jump right into the argument, whatever aspect of the book you may be arguing. Um, for example, with All Quiet on the Western Front, which you were reading this weekend, um, excuse me, one big thing that is talked a lot about in that novel by the characters are sort of the psychological effects of war on young men coming out of high school, essentially. And so this could be a topic for a paper. Another topic might be uh, sort of more technical aspects of the war and how industrialization impacted this war. It was a mechanized war, which the world had never seen really on this scale. It killed millions and millions of people. Uh, so those are a few examples of paper topics for All Quiet on the Western Front. Um, but back to your paper structure, that introduction uh, gets all of that started and ends with the thesis statement on the final paragraph. Now, the body of a paper, especially a literary essay, is made up of primarily quotes from the book. I'll be talking about this more in class because I really want to emphasize it. But we learn an approach in this course called close reading. And in close reading, we mark up a book heavily. We pull out the quotes that are important, and we use those quotes to make an argument in the paper. You do have two or three outside sources, outside literary sources that you can pull into your paper, um, such as SparkNotes or Schmoop or one of these literary websites. Um, but primarily, your argument, your body are made up of quotes from the novel, straight out of the novel. And you build your argument around these quotes, and we'll be spending a good portion of the semester going over this. I just want to introduce the idea to you, but assure you that we will be going over it quite a bit. Um, uh, and so in the body, so what I do in order to prepare literary for writing a literary is to get all the quotes first. I mark up the quotes when I'm reading the book, and then I go back into the book and I pull quotes out that seem to tell a story uh, um, around one or two particular points. Um, and for example, if you were writing on sort of psychological aspects of warfare, you might pull quotes from when Paul talks about um, being 19 and not really having a life to go back to in terms of after the war, and how much this affected him and his comrades. That unlike some of the older soldiers, they didn't really have a life to go back to. And so, what I would do is I would pull a quote out of the book, put it in my paper, and talk about it. Make some comments on it. Um, so this once again is a very introductory lecture to cover both the literary essay and the structure of the paper. So that's what makes up your body. I would look to pull 5 to 7 quotes out of a novel or a play that we'll be reading, um, and uh, um, and, uh, and format those in paragraphs. And we'll be looking more at that in other videos or in the live class. So we've introduced our paper in the introduction. We've given it a thesis statement. We've had a hook. We've told a story. We've connected somehow to the work. We've gone into the body. We've pulled out quotes from the book itself to tell the story of some aspect of the book. Once again, it's not a book report. Some aspects of the book, and um, and we've used the quotes organically out of the story to put together our argument. Once again, we do go to a couple outside sources to supplement just to get some support for making our literary arguments, but the bulk of the paper needs to be quotes from the novel. And the conclusion is where we sort of restate the major points that we've made, and we go over what we've argued, and we restate the thesis statement, and if possible, we reconnect with the opening paragraph. How with our hook, if possible, we come back to it. You'll see this in essay after essay that when the writer uses a particular type of hook, maybe a story, they come back to that story at the end to sort of draw everything into a circle and a conclusion. Um, so this is sort of the basic introductory comments. The last thing I want to show you for this essay is the works cited page. Um, and From my paper that I wrote in 2014, you can sort of see the works cited page. You'll notice that the author's last name sticks out to the left. That's called a hanging indent. And we'll be looking at how to do those. So you will have a very short works cited page. The novel that you're looking at will be one source, and then 2 or 3 other sources from literary websites that you can access online. Unfortunately, we do not have a literary database at Dabney like we did in graduate school. They're very expensive. Uh, It's not really necessary, but we use what is available on the internet, which is primarily websites like SparkNotes, Smoot, Clips Notes, other sites that offer some introductory level of analysis into literature. So as with everything in this course, email me with questions and I'll get right back to you, usually in a matter of minutes, and save some questions for the class. And I hope this helped remind you about what the structure of the paper is and gave you a basic introduction to the literary analysis. And there will be some repetition in class today about this. But thank you.